Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And I am super freaking excited about today's interviews. We are interviewing three young freaking rock stars, okay? They're all in their 20s. They all have hundreds of doors. And those of you that are in your 20s, you better listen up because there are no excuses. So who we've got on the show today is my friend Sterling White. He's been in the business. He's 29 years old, been in the business actually since he was 19. He's deployed 10 million in capital. He's got a portfolio of $26 million, just under 500 doors. Super cool guy, and we're blessed to have him on the show. Welcome, Sterling.
All right, everyone, get your popcorn ready because we're about to drop absolute bombs and golden nuggets.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. Okay. And we've also got Zach Hapenstall, another friend. Jack's founder and the president of ZH Multifamily. He's in $35 million worth of commercial real estate, 308 doors in 4 different apartment assets in Phoenix and Scottsdale. And also an awesome guy, 28 years old. Zach, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks, Rod. I really appreciate it. Honor to be on the show with Kyle and Sterling. Really appreciate it, man.
You bet. Last but definitely not least, Kyle Marcotte. Kyle's 21 years old, and he has already syndicated 2 multifamily buildings, 2 deals, over 119 units, or total of 119 units, valued over $5.5 million. Kyle, welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me on.
You betcha. You betcha. All right. So, guys, what we're going to do is I'm going to have each of you tell your story. And then we're going to dig into why you took this massive action to make these incredible inroads in your lives and certainly inspire thousands and thousands of listeners that I have that are in your age group. So Sterling, I'm going to start with you. Could you take a few minutes and talk about your story, how you got in the business? You know, if you've had any seminars, as I call them, I believe you have. I think I saw that on a Bigger Pockets note. So talk about that, and then we'll go down the line here. So Sterling, you're on, brother.
Yeah, so I'll give a Cliff Note or Spark Note version. So born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, in the parts of the city where you wouldn't want to walk your dog at night or even during the day. So had a fraternal twin brother, single mother. Dad wasn't around very much. And lived on welfare, Section 8 housing, and I'm sure of any type of government assistance my mother didn't tell us about. So not the greatest parts of the city. In just one instance, my brother and I were actually sitting down at one of those, we're about 6 or 7 years old, eating dinner, probably ramen noodles and hot dogs. And as soon as we get done eating, we go upstairs and a bullet comes right through the back patio where we were sitting. So I may not be here, he may not be here, but at the end of the day, decided to use that as fuel. And so my first product was Kool-Aid. And then my second product was Pokemon cards because I had to figure out a way to earn money and transition how I got started in real estate, 2009, where my roommate at the time saw I had some free time during the summer. So I started as a laborer in the construction side, mixing up the mortar and providing it to the bricklayers and other odd jobs. That's when I fell in love with real estate, but not so much the laborer side, being a grunt, I would say, and that great respect for those guys. Then shifted to investing, bought first deal, 23 years old, no money out of pocket. Actually had negative funds in my bank account, but was able to bridge the gap and found a mentor to fund that first deal. Scaled up to 150 single families. And then in 2017, transitioned to multifamily and scaled portfolio to just under 500 units. So that's the Spark Note compressed version.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Love the story about the impact of that bullet. Holy cow! And so we'll come back to your upbringing here in a minute and that impact. Zach, how about you, my friend?
Yeah, that's an amazing story, Sterling. Wow. Yeah. So for me, I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona, and kind of grew up in like a lower middle class family. We were never dirt poor or anything like that, but we're never wealthy. So anyways, I went to school. I had a football scholarship to a small school in Colorado. Realized I wasn't going to make the NFL, wasn't big enough, wasn't good enough. I came back. I wanted to be a sports journalist. And so I got a journalism degree at Arizona State here. And I was a live news anchor and sports reporter on Arizona PBS for about 5-6 months. I hosted a show on Fox Sports Network Arizona, which was really cool at first because you're on TV, you got the adrenaline rush. And then I quickly realized you work crazy hours, you don't make hardly any money. It's very political. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. Okay. So I had just graduated and I was like, I don't want to do this. So I decided I'm not going to pursue that. And while I was going to school, I was working full-time nights and weekends delivering medical equipment. And my boss at the time was like, hey, you can make pretty good money doing healthcare marketing. So I decided, I got my degree. I decided I'm not going to pursue journalism. And of all things, I got a job as a hospice marketer. So basically hospice care is like end-of-life care, mobile nursing caregiving for people with terminal illnesses. Well, my job was to drive all around Phoenix and just walk in cold to hospitals, doctors' offices, assisted living, et cetera, and build relationships with physicians, social workers, whomever. When they had somebody who needed hospice, they would call me. I'd be the first person to meet with that Asian family. So long story short, it was completely out of my experience or what my goals were, but my goal was to make money. And so hospice is actually a very lucrative and competitive business industry. So over a 4-year time span, I was very blessed to start out as a marketer, then become the director of marketing, to become a co-owner in the company. So by the time I was 23, I was making $150K plus a year, making more money than both my parents combined. I bought my first house when I was 23. I got my MBA going to night school during that, and I paid cash. So by the time I was 26, I had my MBA. I had no debt. I had like $120K of cash, and I was making $200K plus a year. But I was burnt out, and I wasn't happy. You know what I mean? So I thought I was pursuing my passion with the journalism, and I realized it wasn't my passion. It was more like a job. It wasn't fun. So then I pursued the money, which I was blessed to do and become financially stable and established. Then I realized that didn't make me happy either. So I was like, man, I need to now gain control of my time. And so I had gotten my real estate license like shortly after my MBA, but I had never used it. And I didn't know much about real estate. But kind of as the cliche story goes, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that kind of changed my mindset as far as passive income, assets, all those things. So anyways, in January of 2018, I was 26. I resigned and I sold my equity in that company. And I said, screw it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to live off of savings for the next 12 months. I'm going to figure out how to create passive income. And so that's what I did. So I cut all my personal expenses down, canceled Netflix, canceled Spotify, whatever I had to do.
Like everything everybody's doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Enough, yeah.
Yeah, I started the pandemic earlier, right? Yeah, I did minimalist living. But yeah, so basically, long story short, I went 10 months of burning through cash. I lost like all my confidence. I was like, what am I even doing? I wake up in the morning, like, what the hell am I doing? But fortunately, we found a 36-unit deal. I deployed almost all the cash that I had. I had 162K left of cash. I started with 260. I just burned through it, invested in mentorship, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, it took 10 months to get the first deal. We closed on it. And then, and that was about 15, 16 months ago. We got it under contract. We closed the first deal 13 months ago. And so in the last 13 months, we've acquired $35 million of assets, 4 assets, 308 units. And actually today, we're closing a 112 unit, $13 million asset today. So as of today, it'll be 48 million. 420 units. And so we've been very blessed. So I think the biggest message, and we'll get into this, is that it feels like you're going through a lot of adversity. It's really tough. Like you're not moving the needle on the front end, but once you get the first deal, you really are learning that whole time and you can catch a lot of momentum. So I think that's the biggest thing that I took from it.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome story. Definitely. Let's circle back to the first deal in a minute here, but I want to give Kyle his moment in the sun. Incredible story, Zach, honestly. And there was something I wanted to circle back. Oh, guys, do not quit your jobs. Kyle had some money in the bank. If you're those of you listening, do not quit your jobs to go do this. You can do this on the side. People ask me that all the time. Should I quit and just do this full time? The answer is always no. And here's why. Because if you get caught up in any fear because you have no income coming in, fear paralyzes you. So just don't do that. Kyle got lucky, and I'm sure it's not luck. Kyle made it happen. But anyway, I just want to circle back to that. Kyle, Zach, sorry, Zach.
And
Sorry,
also the person could take shortcuts in order to get more cash in first, when I would say it's more of a long-term game in this industry.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
those are some great
Yeah,
points.
you don't have to.
Do you agree, Zach?
I do, and I tell people that all the time. And I think I even
Okay.
said it on your podcast, right? It's not necessary. It's kind of like a radical scenario. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, you don't need to do that, because there were a lot of days where I wasn't even making progress. And I was like, what the hell do I do today? You know what I mean? So you don't have to do that. It's not absolutely.
Yeah, I've got students literally that have retired from very high paying jobs like you had, with kids, with families, with on their passive income. So you know, it's doable on the side. All right, Kyle, 21 years old. Boom.
I'll try to follow up
about
those
your
two
story.
studs. Yeah, so I had a pretty similar story to Zach, actually. I played Division I soccer at UC Davis. I was studying pre-medicine and, following the prescribed path, and thought I was successful in that, but just wasn't really that happy. And I realized I was trading my time to the coaches, to teachers, and just really didn't have any control over my life. So again, and then just like Zach, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad my sophomore year of college, and actually just put words to the emotions that I was feeling of like, man, I keep trading my time for all these other things and I'm not really fulfilled. I want to have some control in my life so that I can, spend time doing the things I do like being with my family and following other passions. So I found real estate, and midway through my sophomore year, ended up dropping out of school and doing some of the things that you guys don't necessarily suggest. And I totally agree. Like you absolutely don't have to do what I did. It was one of the hardest 6 months of my entire life, dropping out of school, telling my soccer coach, I'm not going to play Division I soccer anymore. Sorry, you recruited me from Texas to Sacramento. And then also to my parents, sorry that you wanted me to be a doctor and that we had all this situation set up and yada, yada, yada. But I'm actually dropping out and I don't have a deal yet. And we'll see what happens. It took me 6 months from dropping out to actually getting the first deal. It was 107 units in Louisville. And I took a massive risk, and I don't recommend it because I didn't sleep very much those 6 months. But, it definitely put me against the wall, and I was in a position where I was waking up at 5 a.m., doing my miracle morning, reading all day till 10 p.m., and then waking up and doing it again because I just couldn't be alone with myself to let that fear seep in, like you were saying. So I just had to keep grinding, keep pushing, keep going, and not really slow down to think about it because I would go bonkers. So that was kind of that was kind of my story, and just seeing the pre-med route and seeing that I just want to be really clear with this point is like, college is not better or worse. I wouldn't say drop out, but also if you're in college right now and you feel like it's not for you, don't feel obligated to be there, man. Like you follow your own path, follow your heart, and everyone has a different route, and you don't have to follow the one that everyone says you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an awesome story, buddy. Very, very inspiring. And I want to circle back to a couple of things. Definitely want to circle back to fear, but let's talk about college for a minute. So I did a post recently in my big multifamily Facebook group, and I had my arms out and I had all the hundreds of lanyards from all the boot camps that I've done that I collected the lanyards from, and that's my college. Literally, there's probably 250 of them there. So I didn't go to college either. When my mom told me she made 20 grand when I was 18 on the house across the street, I'm like, screw college, I'm getting into real estate. And anybody that's heard my story knows that. First couple of years I crashed and burned, and the third year I discovered mindset and psychology and 10x'd my income. And so I actually have a story similar to you guys, so that's why I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. So let's circle back to the first deal and fear. So Kyle, you talked about yours, freaking out, fear. You just kept yourself so busy. You did the Miracle Morning, guys. I've had Hal Elrod on the show. Incredible book about setting your days off right. If you haven't read it, just go get it. You need it. I've got actually warriors in my coaching program that have been on it, not missed a day, I think for over 3 years, because it's that freaking. Wow. And the guy has 1,000 doors. Had 100 when I met him, has 1,000 now. So that the guy I'm thinking of right now. But so you pushed through. You mitigated the fear by just staying busy. Sterling, how about you? Talk about your dealing with fear, maybe the first deal, just whatever comes to mind when the word fear comes up.
Yeah, so I had a case where that very first deal, I didn't necessarily have fear because I had an aha moment prior to that. Just a spark note for everyone. I was training for the world's fastest fireman carry mile. I'm not a fireman by any means. And so I was training for a year and a half. Turns out the 2 weeks prior to that event, the person I was training with, so I carried someone the equivalent weight for I have to beat a specific time around a mile track, and it was through Guinness. So it was all very, what's that word I'm looking for?
Structured?
Yeah, structured, exactly, where I had to do specific things. So fast forward to the event, person backs out 2 weeks prior to, I have to find someone else. So I actually dropped out of college as well. So similar to what Zach was saying. And so through that is I attempt the record, and then 800 meters in, which is halfway, I dropped the person. The attempt is over. So there was newscasters that were the news that was there, friends that were there, and I absolutely bombed it and failed. So that was my aha. I failed on that large scale to where failure's not really so bad. So I would say when I made that transition to that first deal, I really didn't have that one fear of failure. I just started taking action, committing first, and then figuring the rest out later. So fear really didn't settle for me.
Okay, fair enough. And I love that you talked about failure. We're going to talk about that too. So Zach, how about you, buddy? Did you encounter fear, and when, and how did you overcome it if you did?
Yeah, no, I mean, I encountered a ton of fear, and I still do. I mean, every deal we do, there's a lot of anxiety. I mean, I get nervous to go on podcasts. Like, I was nervous to go on this podcast. And I also follow Miracle Morning. I just did mine this morning, and that always helps. So I'm just like you guys have talked about. I think it's a great regimen to do. But yeah, for me, it was a combination of things. I mean, my faith was my biggest thing. So I'm Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And that really helps me to overcome fear. Honestly, it's good habits, kind of like you were talking about with Miracle Morning. But for me, I had kind of burned my ships behind me, so to speak, right? By quitting the job and kind of like Kyle was saying, like, I would go to like family events or any social events, and people say, well, what do you do? And I say, I'm a real estate investor, but you don't have any real estate. So you haven't made any money in like 10 months. And it's like, you just get sick of it, right? So you get to the point where I had like this monkey on my back. And finally, I'd underwritten so many deals where a deal finally popped up that made sense. And so it's scary, and you don't know if you want to go all in, but your mind tells you, and logically the numbers work, and it's conservative and it makes sense. And so at one point, I mean, my partner Robert and I just said, screw it, we have to do this. So we put the offer in, and the offer got accepted, and we're like, oh crap, like, what do we do now?
Careful what you wish for.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, let's just take a baby step and make an offer, and then it gets accepted. It's like, what do you do next? So then we proceeded, and then we're under contract all of a sudden, and I'm $25,000 non-refundable, and we need to come up with $1.4 million, and we've never raised money. And so it's really, there comes a breaking point where it needs to make sense, obviously, right? It needs to be conservatively underwritten, but you always second guess yourself, and you don't know, that I do this right? But at some point you have to trust, or at least just take the leap. Even if you're super scared, you have to be ready to fail. Okay. You can't be afraid of failure. You have to realize, okay, if I fail, I'll lose this money, but I'm still alive and I can still keep going. So I think I'd overcome so much adversity up to that point, just personally and psychologically, that I was just ready for it. I was like, screw it. Like, what do I have to lose at this point? I've already have kind of hit rock bottom. Not to be dramatic. I wasn't like a drug addict or anything, right, but confidence-wise, you know what I mean? So
got it. Yeah.
So that's kind of how we pushed it. We just made it happen. And then I think when you put yourself in these high-pressure situations, you figure it out along the way, right?
You step it up. You step up. I'll give you, right now there are so many people in fear. Fear is pervasive right now. Yeah. And honestly, the only thing you should fear is the freaking emotion of fear. Okay? Because, I sat with Tiffy, my wife, and I said, let's look at the worst case. Because my business, I mean, we were on track for a sold out 700 person event in Orlando. We had to cancel. Of course, that's where we make our most money. And nobody's, people are so much in fear that they're not realizing this is the greatest opportunity to learn real estate. I mean, and to take action, because there are incredible opportunities coming. This is going to be better than 2008. I'll just tell you right now, it's going to be. I hate to say it, but there are going to be a lot of operators that did skinny deals that they're going to lose them. And so, there's going to be incredible opportunity now, if you can push through the fear in whatever it is that you're interested in. So,
Rod, it's very interesting that you mention about, because we're in it, and I think people don't understand that we're in it, and then they're going to look forward and regret that they didn't take the action. Right. So it's having that awareness.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I mean, if there were ever a time to learn and get into this business, this is it. Okay. And so back to my fear. So I sat with Tiffany. I said, what's the worst case? Well, we're in a 1-bedroom apartment and, we're sucking it up. I mean, we're out of our palatial compound here in Florida on the water. But we've got each other. And I said, can you live with that? And she said, yeah. And I said, so can I, as long as we're together. And so guys, those of you in fear right now, look at worst case. Are you going to have food on the table, a roof over your head? And if the answer is yes, are you going to be with the people you love? If the answer is yes, then you can get through freaking anything, because the fear paralyzes. And that's why I went through that little exercise with Tiffy. All right. Awesome. So now let's talk about failure. And I'll give you my.
Hey, can I talk about fear real quick?
Yeah, please. Oh, I thought you started the conversation, brother. You pushed through fear, but yes, please.
Yeah. So for me, fear is like, it's always an illusion, right? I think that we have our imagination makes it bigger. And I think that if you can discipline your mind and make sure that you change the channel, right? You can't stop fear from coming up, but you can stop yourself from listening to that fear. So when you basically try to have a cable TV in your head. So when, let's say you're watching the news right now and something comes up you don't want to hear, you change the channel, right? It's the same thing with your mind. So when those kind of thoughts come up, you just don't use your imagination to keep steamrolling down this path of fear. Those things never even really happen. Like I get nervous to come on podcasts, and sometimes these pictures come in my mind of like me messing up or something like that, but that never even happens. So it's just like, it's fake fear, and it's trying to appear real, but it's really not. And if you can, and I always wonder, like, why don't we do that with the positive part of our mind? Why don't we ever like steamroll down to these positive things? Because you can imagine anything you want. So just try to like change the channel on those thoughts. You can't stop them from coming up, but you can definitely stop from listening to them. So
and that is absolutely one way, and a good way. Standing guard at the door to your mind. I mean, recognizing that the news isn't here to inform us. It's here to startle us and scare us and get us to read more. Negative headlines sell. Negative headlines in marketing are the best way to put out a white paper. The 5 fatal mistakes passive investors make when they invest in a syndication. That would get read over, hey, come invest in my deal. So yes, you stand guard at the door to your mind. You bring in the good stuff. You listen to my Own Your Power clips, or you go on YouTube and put in motivation, and it's tons of incredible stuff. And pushing through the fear as well, not just recognizing that action mitigates fear. Like in my example with my boot camp, we immediately said, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to react? And now I've got a virtual version of the boot camp happening on the same dates. I'm going to live stream it here from the house, same panel lineup. It's going to be incredible. And tickets are selling like crazy, and it's okay. We'll get through it. And so, and right now I'm able to acquire people from my team that other people have let go that are like the top of the top of the top. So this is an opportunity for me to get human resources that I would never get otherwise. So again, guys, if you're listening, whatever situation you're in, you need to repurpose this. So how can you capitalize on it? And I was listening to a mastermind with Jay Abraham, the marketing genius Jay Abraham, and he coined the phrase, or mentioned the phrase, ethical opportunism. And I love that. Maintaining your integrity, but looking for opportunity right now. Not price gouging friggin' masks and ventilators, but having ethical opportunism. I thought that was awesome. So now let's go to failure.
Before that, Rod, I want to mention 2 things. So what Kyle was saying, so false evidence appearing real for the fear. And then you made a great point, is you're pivoting right now in terms of switching to the transition to the virtual, and then also being able to hire. So that I love that you mentioned, and that's being an entrepreneur, just knowing when. So
here's the pivot: face everything and rise.
Love it.
Okay, there's the antithesis. Yeah, and I use the F word in my boot camp when I talk about this, but I love face everything and rise. It's so much better than the other 2. So let's talk about failure. And I'll start with you, Kyle. Have you had a failure, a setback, gotten your butt kicked, nose bloodied, that set you up for your future success? Does anything come to mind? I'm going to ask all 3 of you the same question here.
Yeah, so real estate specifically, we actually had a 24 unit in Austin under contract in January, and we ended up having to drop out of that deal because they were falsifying some of the rent rolls, and just a little bit of adversity, and it definitely felt like failure. We sent out all the marketing to our investors, and we had drummed up a lot of interest, and then we had to tell them like, never mind, we can't do that deal. But then now, actually, last month we got under contract on a 90 unit, so way bigger and a lot more lucrative and a lot better of a deal, honestly, for the investors as well. So it was just, now we've sent out this market.
What was the lesson for you in that setback?
The lesson is that there's always another opportunity, and also all obstacles, they're not even obstacles, they're opportunities to bigger things. If you're not going down a path and something gets closed off, it's because that wasn't for you, and there's something greater for you on another path. So don't dwell in it and think, oh, that 24 unit was for me. It was my destiny. It's not, it didn't happen. So now just keep your eyes open for the new thing. Quit looking back in the rearview mirror.
Don't let emotion get involved. This business is empirical. It's numbers. It's numbers, and it's asking the right questions, period. It's not emotional. You're not going to live there. Love it, Kyle. Awesome. Sterling, how about you? A previous failure or setback that comes to mind that helped position you for future success. If not, it's okay. But if anything comes to mind.
So I would say that world record attempt, failing at that.
That's right.
Really
that's what caused me to think of it. I forgot about that. Yep.
And then there was one deal. This was a 118 unit that was in Cincinnati, Ohio, to where we got all the way through the due diligence, and turns out we had in our underwriting that we could have patched the roofs, which we ended up getting vendors up there, and they said all the roofs needed to be replaced. So through that, we went back to the seller and attempted to renegotiate, and we had already paid about $10,000 worth of, I would say it was due diligence, but intuition, and the seller wasn't budging. So from that conversation, should have listened in a little bit more on the front end, that he had been doing that for the duration of a long time of his ownership. So the very first deal, for the very next deal, once we got an understanding of those roofs, we got vendors up there, got a quote, and had the seller replace those before closing.
Mm-hmm. Good. That's the lesson. Good. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, just unrelated to real estate. It was actually right before I got into real estate. I kind of talked about how I was part of that healthcare organization. I had some equity, and I thought that I would have had a lot more equity, and then I would have basically have become a millionaire upon the exit of that, which I didn't at all. And at the time I was angry, and I was blaming other people, like, oh, they screwed me, et cetera, et cetera. And as I look back, you have to really be accountable. And I learned to be accountable that I left myself vulnerable by not protecting myself and being naive about certain things. I think that was the biggest thing I realized is you can complain, but nobody really cares, right? And so you can feel sorry for yourself, but nobody cares. They're not going to help you. And so you have to truly be accountable. So if you do fail or you make a mistake, don't blame it on other people. You have to be truly accountable. And fortunately, thus far, we haven't really had any true failures. We've gotten second place on plenty of deals, haven't won deals. We were awarded a deal 3 weeks ago, the 92 unit deal. This is a separate deal in Phoenix. And we went under an access agreement. We did our full due diligence. And then just last week, we had to back out of the deal because this whole COVID-19 thing popped up, right?
Sure. Rates bumped up.
Exactly.
Proceeds reduced.
Exactly. Every other day we talk to our lender, our proceeds are getting cut. And this is the top broker in the market that we finally got to deal with. And so I was like, I don't want to retrade them. What do we do? I was really nervous to even talk to the broker. And so I finally just called and said, hey, man, I didn't even go into any retrading or anything. I said, we cannot take our investors into this environment right now. We have a fiduciary responsibility, and we can't even predict our loan. Lenders are pulling out of deals right now. And so it felt like a failure at the time, because I was like, we finally got a deal. But you have to kind of realize, in the grand scheme of things, it's better to pull out than to lose your shirt, right? And get burned right now and have your investment.
And that broker knew it. And I will tell you, I will say this, another beautiful thing is brokers have been the belle of the ball, and that dynamic is shifting.
Yep.
Money going hard day one, that dynamic is shifting, and you guys it's going to get back to kind of to normal in a way in that regard.
Yeah. And to that point, Ron, I don't want to interrupt you, but real quick, in the last 5 days, I've probably gotten more calls from brokers than in the last 12 months saying, hey, Zach, how's it going? Warming up for me. And you're right. The dynamic has shifted now, right?
It's become
more of a buyer's market. The market will soften. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a positive for sure. And, back to failure for just a moment. We're also going to talk about your teams that you've put together. And I also want to talk, one of the other topics is going to be what drives you guys. That's probably land the plane with that. But I want to talk about, give you, anybody's listened to my story, knows that I lost $50 million in 2008, got my butt handed to me. And, may or may not know that I've built 24 businesses. And, 3 were worth tens of millions of dollars. Most of the rest were spectacular flaming failures. I call them seminars because you learn from them. But the point is we fail our way to success, guys. And anyone listening to my show has heard me say that many times. It's not a failure unless you don't get back up and you don't learn the lesson. Otherwise, it's just experience. That's really what it is. And again, the old adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, absolutely does. So now let's talk about team, and I want you each to describe, if you have a partner, if I'm not talking about the broker relationships or any of that. I'm talking about just, if you've got a partner in a deal or in general, and what that looks like, how you discovered them, and we'll drill down that a little bit. So Kyle, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, great. So my partner currently his name's Nick, and he's extremely analytical. So he does a lot of the underwriting things. I've kind of labeled myself more as like the charisma or like the extrovert, and I like to raise the capital, do a lot of the marketing and the brand awareness and help with the business plan. And then he's over here doing underwriting. He would not want to do anything else on a Saturday than underwrite real estate deals, which for me it's not what I want to do. So it's a perfect partnership in that sense. And I think as far as partners are concerned, you got to try to find someone that isn't exactly like you, hopefully is the antithesis of you and can do the things you're not very good at.
You guys, I know you've heard me say this dozens and dozens of times on my show. There's no greater partnership than when you pull together someone that loves relationship building and communication with someone that loves spreadsheets. And I've got a Robert, and everyone should have a Robert. He's a CPA, and he's a brilliant guy, done $1 billion worth of deals, and that's his purview. How about you, Sterling? I know your story, but
yeah, I would say very similar to what Kyle was alluding to. I'm more of extrovert, bringing on investors, the marketing, the face, and then the partner that I have is more behind the scenes, doing underwriting, financials, because I'm a firm believer that, and this comes down to a self-awareness, just me understanding what the things I excel in and my weaknesses are and being fine with those weaknesses, and then finding someone to complement that. Because I feel that when you're growing the business, that you're trying to plug as much holes in terms of weaknesses in that business as you can. Because if you have 2 people who are crushing it on underwriting and the operations, then who's going to be working on the sales and marketing? Then you would have to get another partner or hire someone potentially in that.
So you have an analytical partner, and
then another partner that also is the COO, that is the property manager amongst all the communities. Because I realized that, yeah, exactly. Because I realized that I'm not a manager. I myself do not enjoy managing people. So I ended up plugging someone in place to be able to do that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And guys, those of you listening, don't try to focus on building your weaknesses. Focus on maximizing your strengths and aligning, hiring, or partnering for your weaknesses. You will get much further, much faster. Okay. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think we all 4 of us have very similar dynamics here, because I'm the same way. I mean, for me, I got my MBA. I've taken the economics classes, the accounting. I do understand the numbers, but I freaking hate sitting in front.
You don't love them.
It drives me crazy. Yeah, and I did that in the beginning. I was doing that for days and hours and hours, and it drives me crazy. It makes you not want to do multifamily. So yeah, for me, I'm more focused on acquisitions. I've got 2 primary partners in our company, Summit Equity, Bikram Sandhu. He has an economics degree. He's a CPA. And he's much smarter than me, right? I think kind of like you, we've talked about this, Rod. I've got my CPA partner as well, and he's the ultimate compliment to me, because I'll talk to brokers all day, tour properties, and he doesn't want to talk to anybody, but he's really good with numbers. You
just lock him in a room and throw meat in there from time to time, and they're happy.
Yeah, exactly. He's a machine.
I'm just kidding for those of you analytical folks, but the story here is, I hope you're getting it. All 3 of these successful, 4 of us really, have maximized their strengths and aligned with someone for their weaknesses, which is it's just an absolute recipe for success, which is why I wanted to talk about it. So let's talk about, I want to circle back. I wrote down the word hospice because, Zach, you were doing hospice sales, and it just reminded me of the story that I talk about, regret, in that there was this hospice nurse in Australia named Bronnie Ware that counseled patients at the end of their lives and asked them, one question was, what regrets do you have? And she wrote a book about it. It's called The 5 Regrets of Dying. And the number one regret was not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life. And so that just triggered that. I wanted to mention that again, guys. No freaking regrets. So now let's talk about, let's go a little deeper. And I'm going to ask you guys to try to be vulnerable with me here, okay? Because I'll start the answer to this question. And the question is, what drives you? Why are you pushing through no matter what? And I'll tell you what it was for me. So I'll be vulnerable. So, when I immigrated to this country, I was 6. I couldn't speak English, got my butt kicked in school. My mom thinking that she was helping me, would send me to school in wooden shoes for show and tell and leather shorts like the Germans wear, and got my butt kicked again. And so, I had all these things that caused me to think that I wasn't good enough. And so my question was that I subconsciously asked myself was, how can I show them I'm good enough? That's what drove me. It was a negative. It turned out to propel me to incredible success, but it was a huge negative, and so I'm just curious, and maybe it's not a negative for you guys. It very likely isn't, but I want to know what the driver is. So Zach, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Rod, because for me, I honestly don't really care that much about money. I don't really spend money. And I like to have it, and I'm very competitive. So I like to be the best at what I do, and I like to create the financial freedom. And so, honestly, for me, it's kind of like I want to have a gigantic impact in multiple different industries. And that could be a combination of media, business, politics. And so right now, honestly, it's kind of an abstract idea. I don't exactly know what it is. And with real estate, I liked real estate because of the vehicle. I'm not in love with buildings. I'm not a construction guy. I'm not an architecture guy, but I liked the vehicle.
Why do you like the vehicle if you're not into buildings?
I like the vehicle because of the size. I like how it's big. It's on a grand scheme. It's big numbers. And when I was trying to exit healthcare and I wanted to do something big, I wanted to take the next big step, I was looking at the biggest industries in the world, right? And it's banking, it's healthcare, it's real estate, it's technology. And I was trying, and I'm not an inventor or some type of genius, right? And so I said, what's the easiest entry point? What have most people gotten wealthy through? And it's real estate, right? You can almost copy people's blueprint as long as you work hard and you stay disciplined. And so for me, I like that vehicle, and I think it can lead into other avenues.
What other avenues would it lead into that are appealing to you? Is it for significance, so that you're out there killing it with impacting people? Is it what specifically?
Yeah, no, it's to impact people. And I think and like I said, it's still an abstract. It's an abstract thought.
Fair enough.
But I think it gives you the resources financially and network of people in order to make the impact. And so if you view yourself as a leader where you have the traits to do that, well, you still have to have the financial resources, and you have to have the network of people surrounding you in order to really truly make an impact. And so, like I said, it's not totally concrete. Yeah, but and to your point too, though, Rod, for me, I'm a competitor, and I'll use any little thing as motivation. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having a chip on your shoulder, right? You don't want to be malicious or negative. Like you said, you want to have a truly abundant mindset where you're helping other people. You don't want to have a scarcity competitive mindset. But I believe, just from playing sports, competition breeds success, right? And so there's nothing wrong with competitive greatness.
No, the most successful people on the planet are incredibly competitive. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Sterling, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say my environment is fuel for me. So one thing about myself, I had people very close to me telling me that I wouldn't amount to anything. Don't want to list those specific family members. And one thing is, my brother decided to take the common path that people do take from that setting, and he's actually facing hard time due to that. And this is my fraternal twin brother. So one of my huge whys is being a blueprint and an ideal for people that are in those types of neighborhoods, that there is another way out. So that's my main why that I have to really give back. And hey, you don't have to sell drugs, commit crimes to really make it out. Here's a way, and this is how I did it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. That's awesome. And circling back to you for just a second, Zach, I just thought of something, and that is you said you didn't have a lot of clarity around it yet. And guys, I didn't get this till I was 40. Okay, that's when I had my epiphany about the meaning of life and why I do what I do and why I now freaking love what I do. And I will tell you, as you get older, you get more clarity around this, around your mission and purpose in life. And like there's that quote: the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and then the day you find out why. And so,
right.
And again, I was 40 floating in the back of my pool when I had my epiphany. And so, it's okay if you don't know it yet. But Kyle, what's your answer to the question?
So what drives me is definitely my family, 100%.
Okay.
In 2008, my dad lost his job and he ended up having to sleep in his car, drive down to Houston and clean pools all week and then come home and be with us on the weekend. So I watched my parents work their tails off, but they just didn't have the financial education. So all they were doing was trading their time. And it wasn't a lack of work. Like, my dad works harder than anyone I've ever met, and that's where I get my work ethic from. So I want to provide a basis for my family to be able to retire and to live life how they are, because my parents are in their mid-50s and they both work physical jobs. My mom's a yoga teacher and my dad cleans pools. So it's not going to last forever, right? They don't have a retirement set up. They don't know how to invest, but so I feel like for me, I want to provide for my family and change our family tree and history so that we can be, wealthy and that we can have residual income and investments that fuel our lifestyle. So everything I do is through that lens.
I love it, man. I freaking love it. Guys, those of you listening and you three, we will always do more for others than we'll do for ourselves. And so, those of you listening need to tap into what that fuel is going to be for you. And sometimes it can be a quasi negative, like mine. How can I show them I'm good enough? Or Sterling, let me prove to the naysayers and smack them when I freaking kick ass. Or the drive is to provide and add value, and, like you said, a blueprint and make an impact. These are the words I've heard from you guys, and take care of your parents. I freaking love it. And what a driver that is. That's why you get up early in the morning and stay up late at night and do whatever it takes to make this happen. So those of you listening, figure out what it is for you. If you don't know what it is you want yet, then for God's sakes, go listen to my January 1st episode where I did goals on my Rod Khleif official page. All right, and we're going to take just a break and hear from our sponsor.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. I know you've been hard at work helping our warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. Okay, welcome back. So the next question I have for you guys is, if you could teach school children one thing, what might it be?
I would say myself is to be a problem solver. I've got a 7-year-old little angel is what I call her. And she's, you could say she's my mini-me, but she's got hair all the way down to her back. So just imagine me with a full head of hair. And so I always, when she comes to me with a problem or something that she's figuring out, I put a question to her to have her start to think about it versus always looking to someone to be able to figure things out. So that's what I would say, being more of a problem solver, because that's what I believe how it is when you actually get into the real world.
I love it. And I love the fact that you ask her to solve it. And my problem has always been that I'm very directive, where I just say, okay, this is what you do. Boom. Now let me keep working. And I used to have this sign on the wall behind people that sat in my office when I had a regular office that said, what do you think we should do, to remind me to do what you just did. So awesome, Sterling. Zach, what about you? What would you, if you had it any way, what would you be teaching school children that they're not getting now?
Yeah, no, there's a few things. And Grace and I, my fiance, we're getting married in 6 months, and we plan to have at least 4 or 5 kids. And so we kind of want to build the empire.
I would say add 5 to 7 more to that.
All right, yeah. There you go. We'll have a dozen. We'll have a baker's dozen. How about that? Yeah, and I like the term you use, Rod, where you call your coaches warriors. And I always tell people we want to create warriors in our children and send them out in the world to have an influence as well. And so, I mean, I've already been thinking a lot about what we want to teach our kids, and I would apply this to school kids too. And the first thing would be financial education. You know what I mean? Because I think there's a lot of miseducation and false education, and obviously Robert Kiyosaki preaches on this, and so that's a big thing. And so just financial education, even if it's as simple as being disciplined with your savings and things like that. And the second thing would just be discipline all around, right? Because I think if you, like, I read Dave Ramsey when I was 18, and I followed that book, and that allowed me to kill my school debt. And so I think if you can learn these basic financial fundamentals in a world where you've got social media and ads storming around you, telling you to buy this and buy that, and you want to look like this person, I think that would be huge. And then the third thing, and we kind of talked on it earlier, is just don't be afraid of failure. Because I think the way the school system teaches you, and I'm a product of this, is that if you get a B or a C, you're a failure, right? My parents weren't like this, by the way. My parents were very laid back, not like your super strict people, but I got a 4.0 in my undergrad because I put the pressure on myself and I would stress myself out. I never got a B because I was afraid of failure. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the biggest thing, is like, don't be afraid of failure. And I think the sooner you learn that in life, the sooner you'll grow and overcome more adversity. So I think those 3 things, the financial education, discipline, and don't be afraid of failure, we need to teach people that at a younger age.
Absolutely. We fail our way to success, guys. I mean, I remember I met Sarah Blakely. I talk about this on the podcast from time to time. She's the billionaire owner of Spanx, had $5,000 when she started. And I mean, she was on Forbes last year. And she told me that her father used to ask them at the dinner table, what have you failed at today? Yeah. Now, that'd be a great question for your kids. Love it. Love it. How about you, Kyle?
So on the same token of Zach, I would teach financial education, and mainly just assets versus liabilities, and teaching people that you got to be patient with your money. Don't immediately go and buy the car with your earned income. Spend the earned income on an asset that produces income, then go buy the car. Like, it doesn't mean you can't have the car. It just means be patient. Wait. I think the wealthy just have a step in the middle that the middle class kind of just skip. So if we could just teach kids that at a young age, I think that everyone would be investing, and very few people would spend their first paycheck out of college on a BMW. They would save the time. They would buy their first duplex and maybe house hack it, and they would just be a little bit smarter. And it's really a simple concept. I think we could totally teach that in public schools and all schools, honestly.
Yeah, don't get me started. That's why I asked the question. This is just like mind-numbing how stupid the system is right now. But okay, the one I would add is to teach them curiosity. I think there's no greater trait that you can teach them. Or to keep it.
Would you say keep it? How to keep the curiosity?
Well, yeah, just to have it and keep it and maintain it. Like I'll tell my wife, that boat has stabilizers underneath it, and she's like, who gives a shit? But that's the kind of it's stuff that you just be curious about everything that you see, because when you're curious, not only do you grow, but you start to see solutions and opportunities through that curiosity. And I think that's a big one for me. Awesome answers, guys. Now, normally I would ask the question, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now? But I still kind of want to ask it, so I'll have to go back to freaking 17. So
teens? Yeah, teens.
17 So for Kyle and for Zach, I could say 20. For the two, Zach and Sterling, I could say 20. But Zach, I'll start with you. What would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now about life? It doesn't just have to be real estate, about real estate and life. And again, remember, we're talking to a whole bunch of 20-year-olds right now that listen to my show. So dig deep on this. Answer this question, guys.
Yeah, I think for me, like I always grew up like very introverted and like self-conscious and things like that. So I was like a silent hard worker. And so what I would say to people is I would just tell people, like, don't worry about what other people think. Like, you really can't care. You have to almost develop like a scrappy mentality where you don't give a crap what other people think of you. And I think that relates to not having a fear of failure. Because for me, it was a big thing to do like the news anchoring. I was terrified every time I would go live, but I was pushing my comfort zone. And then I was terrified to do the marketing thing and put myself in front of people. And so those experiences really helped me. But then I fell into a W-2 job where I was trained to produce and produce and produce. So when I left that job and I was truly on my own with an entrepreneur mindset is when I truly developed that mindset of I don't care what you think anymore. You know what I mean? Because who are you to judge me? Because at the end of the day, you're with your loved ones or what you think of yourself. And so I think if I was going back to 20 and I just didn't care what people thought of me, I think I could have progressed faster, and I think it could help a lot of people.
No question. Let me add to what you just said because it's freaking brilliant, and that is, first of all, people don't care that freaking much about you. They care about them, okay? Yep. And I see this resonates with me because I felt the same way. Horribly terrified of rejection and failure or humiliation. I mean, huge fear. Would never raise my hand in class, and now I used to speak in front of thousands of people a year. We'll see when that comes back. So that was a big one for me. But I can't, like you, I came to the realization. First of all, I don't give a shit if they reject me. Yeah, after they know me, they are screwed up because I've got a big heart and I care about people. And so it's their BS. Or they just don't know who I am if they reject me. And I came to that realization. And then again, to supplement that with, people don't really care that much about other people. They care about themselves. That's the truth of it. It's sad, but it's the truth of it. All right. Awesome. What about you, Sterling?
I would say investing in yourself. You can never go wrong with that. I even enjoy investing in myself more than real estate. So with that, meaning when I really took the path of the self-improvement, so really rewiring my limiting beliefs that I had and replacing those with more empowering ones, that's where things
You
really
did that? Did you go to Date with Destiny and do that?
No, I started with Earl Nightingale.
Oh, so no kidding.
Kind of really.
Tony does that at Date with Destiny. You go through that. I apologize. I interrupted you. Forgive me.
Rude, Rod.
It's all the hate mail I ever get on my friggin' reviews. You know, great guests and good stuff. I just wish he'd stop interrupting his guests. Yeah, I'm sorry. I get excited. That's all it is. But so that's awesome, man. And so you saw that you had these limiting beliefs and you worked on yourself.
Well, some of the limiting beliefs I didn't even know were there until I started listening to this positive input. And even still this day, I know I have limiting beliefs that I would consider blind spots. So as I keep steadily becoming more self-aware let's say I say something, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a limiting belief. And then replace that. Yeah,
when you say it to yourself, you know, it's like, you know, you catch yourself, and that's so insightful, Sterling, because guys, you know, be very careful of your self-talk. Those of you listening, don't self-depreciate ever. Don't ever make yourself less to make someone else feel good. Because your brain is listening. Don't ever do that. Awesome, Sterling. And Earl Nightingale, can you still buy his stuff? I mean, the guy's been dead for 100 years.
Yeah, so I was going to the library. And
no kidding.
Yeah, I had the CDs.
I would listen.
Oh, yeah.
What's a library, right? Wow.
Because I couldn't afford books when I really started the path on the self-improvement, figured it out. And I listened to his CD so many times, they actually started skipping. So
what's a CD? Exactly.
Exactly.
Wow, that's so impressive, Sterling, that you drove yourself, walked or whatever to the library to listen to this stuff. And guys, those of you listening, you've got to bring this good stuff in. I mean, there's Earl Nightingale, there's Jim Rohn, there's Tony Robbins, there's so much quality stuff out there that'll get you pointed in the right direction. Thank you, Sterling. Huge gift. Kyle, what about you?
I'd say ask yourself better questions because like you said, your brain is always listening. And so some of the questions I ask myself on a regular basis now are, if I could have my dream life, if I could be successful in whatever it was, what would that look like? And then try to actually just let your mind be open to that. Don't interrupt it. Don't get in the way and just ask it that and stay open to it. And then another question I ask is, what's my 10-year plan? And why can't that be a 6-month plan? And then usually it doesn't become a 6-month plan necessarily, but it sure as heck isn't a 10-year plan anymore. Now maybe it's 8 or 6 or 7, but it's massive. And you just start to see all these like different ways that you can approach the problem. And your brain is always listening. So when you posit those questions to yourself, you'll start to see it from different angles. You'll start to break through. And I think that I just put my head down in my teens and just was like, I'm going to be a soccer player. That's all I do. I don't think outside. I don't ask myself any different questions like, hey, maybe you don't like soccer that much, or what would it look like if you didn't play? You know what I mean? It was just, nope, not even going to entertain that. Just going to keep putting my head down. So I'd say take a step back and ask yourself some good questions and just see what happens.
I love it. And I'm going to tell you, I have an incredible resource for this because I put together this list of quality personal questions you should ask yourself. Wow. There are hundreds here. Okay. And I give it away for free. So if you guys want my list of quality questions, there's personal questions and business questions. Text the word thinking. It's for thinking questions. Text the word thinking to 41411. I'll give you a copy of this. And it's awesome.
Kyle, I mean, Kyle laid that one right up.
Yeah, hundreds of questions. What's that?
How's that for a setup?
Yeah, he
right. Thank you for that. Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Kyle now.
But listen, this is free. I'm not selling it.
I know. I'm just kidding.
But it's an awesome resource. So guys, wow, this has really been a treat for me. I will have to tell you. And let me just see if there's anything else I want to ask you guys.
You were talking about favorite books or?
Oh yeah. That'd be good. That'd be good. I mean, we guys talked about Kiyosaki. Yeah. What are some good books that you guys love that have had an impact on your life? It doesn't have to be one. If it can be several. So Sterling, you brought it up. No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, I would say Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field. Anything that he has. There is, guys, we're trying to think of another one that he has. The Strangest Secret. That was another one that he published too. The Maverick Mindset by Doug Hall. The Alchemist is a really good book. So many great books out there.
So much good stuff out there. I've got thousands of them in one of my other buildings here. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few. There's so many of them. When I started reading books, by the way, is when I really felt like I started to make that progression. And by the way, I always tell people too, I don't actually read books because I'm too anxious. I can't just sit and read a book. I do Audible. Okay. So audio books while I'm working out or driving. But I think we mentioned Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. I think that's a great one. Everybody needs to read that and try to practice that. One that I read constantly, and you just mentioned his name, Rod, is The Power of Ambition by Jim Rohn. And I like that because it's kind of like old school and it talks about habits and disciplines, but it's very straightforward to the point. There's no fluff. It's like if you follow the disciplines and you're consistent, you will have that progress. Another good one is Mastery.
And he taught Tony Robbins. That's how Tony started, was Jim Rohn.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Mastery by Robert Greene is great because I think all you guys like Sterling, Rod, Kyle, when you start to have success, people will probably say, oh, well, this guy is like an overnight success. They're a genius. They did this and that. And I think Mastery by Robert Greene, it goes through like every successful person has put in countless hours and grinded it out and gone through adversity. There is no magic. You have to grind it out. And it talks about like Edison spent tons and tons of hours. And then the last one I'll give, and I'll let Kyle go, is it's called Psycho-Cybernetics.
I
forget the name of the author.
Maxwell Maltz?
Yeah, there you go, Max. Yep, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was L. Ron Hubbard. No, it's not. Who's the author's name?
Maxwell Maltz.
Okay,
it's Psycho-Cybernetics, and it basically just talks about the psychology, and it's similar in the sense that your brain is working when you're grinding along. So you have to give patience and let the creative mechanism work in order for these results to come. So it talks about
along the lines of like asking yourself a question before you go to bed, or
it even talks about not putting so much pressure on yourself. Like Einstein and Edison, for example, they'll grind it out, grind, and they couldn't come to the answer. But when they relax and they let their inner working mind start to work and they take a nap, boom, something comes to them. And so I think that's a really good book is Psycho-Cybernetics. So
I own it. I just haven't read it yet. So I love it. Good. Kyle.
The book I'm recommending the most lately has been The E-Myth. And that book talks all about how you can scale out of your business and systemization. And because I see a lot of people ask me the question of like, should I just buy single families and self-manage? And I'm like, well, you're kind of going to give yourself a full-time job there. You should read this book before you make that decision. So that book talks about how a lot of small businesses fail because the owner is trying to do too much and he can't delegate. And it teaches you how to delegate. And that book's really changed my life and made me choose multifamily over a single family route. And I definitely think it's worth the read. Interesting.
I've never had that one come up. I mean, I know the book Inside Out, Backwards and Forwards, Michael Gerber, and there's lots of different iterations of it. And every business is nothing but people and systems. I just have not had that as an answer. That's really impressive that you were already there, Kyle. Okay, guys. Well, listen, this has been a blast for me, and I will put all your contact information in the show notes. Zach, Sterling, Kyle, you've added tremendous value today. It's absolute treat to have you on the show together like this, and I can't wait. You know what? Let's circle back in a year and see where you rock stars are in a year. Let's make sure we do that. If I forget, will you please hit me up? And I think that'll be fun to do this again. It's great hanging with you guys. Take care.
Have a great one, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Rod.